Hello, and welcome to part 2 of how to make your dragon. Today you're going to be learning how and why you should decorate your dragon. Now you're probably asking yourself, I know how to decorate a dragon, what's the issue? Well, the thing is there are several things you need to consider when making an articulated dragon. Now, first of all, you cannot design it or decorate it in any way that requires supports. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of designing something that doesn't need supports. Now, here's a design I came up with, and I want to show you what it looks like. And all I did here was attach several half spheres, and I would turn them and make them smaller as they went up here. Not too difficult, mind you. The way I did this was I put one, I put another. Well, actually, after I did this one right here, I copied it, and then I used the arrow keys, and then I rotated it slightly so it would curve inward. You see how it's curving inward? And then I duplicated these, and then I moved them up, but then I shrank them and stretched them. What I wanted was a look that is the as you went up on this dragon's body, the shapes became smaller. Okay. Now there are some issues with this design that I want to talk to you about. But first of all, before we do that, we need to talk about your design. See, here's the thing. This is a normal looking dragon. I've seen this dragon several times all over the internet, but I want you to see some different options. Now, this is the typical dragon, right? Scales, horns, the whole thing. Looks good. Looks great. If you do something like that, great. Try to make it a little different. Now, this one is a little more interesting because it's not what you expect. It's like a bunch of crystals. Looks like, I don't know, some sort of, cube that was stretched and then has a pyramid at the end. I think you could do that. And there's another one here. Oh, I think I got a better picture of it. Yeah, there you go. This one put roses and leaves on the side for this dragon. See? Different. And of course, using the multicolored filament really does help this thing. So interesting. And somebody even used pizza slices for their one dragon design. Now this one failed actually when I printed this. And yes, I was the dork that did this. Not a problem. I would have taken these two out right here because they got in the way of the second one I printed, so it wouldn't move at all. Would not move at all. And that's the other thing. When you're designing something, you got to consider the movement. The second part here would not move up. These two would not let it move up. The other thing is when I printed this, it did not look like pizza. You had to really, really think about it because it looks like pizza here. But when it's printed in a color, people didn't know what it was. They're like, oh, spikes that are bumpy. Great. Now, let's go back to this design. This right here apparently is a very hard thing to find. It's a chili. All I did was find the chili. Now, you may have it on yours and you just, your library, chili, hit enter, and it might show up. I've had students say, Mr. Amparo, did not show up. Now, if you're one of those students where it does not show up, well then, here's what you can do. You can go to gallery and find it here. However, it's probably much faster to just type in the word or two words, Tinkercad and chili. Enter. I posted it here. It's not my design. I just was tired of students asking me, hey, where's the chili? I'm also going to post it in the YouTube notes, the link to this one in particular, so you can do it too. And all I did was turn it upside down and got rid of half of it. Okay, so here is what you need to consider. Here are the things you need to consider before attempting to design your dragon. Okay, number one, let me show you right here what I'm talking about. So when you're doing this, you duplicate it and then you drag it back here. Now it's kind of hard to see if this thing's actually working. Now you have to make sure that when you align these two, there is some actual space right here. Right now, these two are touching. When they print, they will not move. You will have a stiff dragon. So I would change the settings here and just move it slightly. I would move it with the arrow key forward, and you're like, it looks like it's clear. Here's another way to find out. You click on your shape and you click the letter T. That'll give you a better idea to see whether this is actually touching or not. And look, wow, that would definitely be touching. Okay, so you want to move this a little bit forward. Okay, let's give it a look over here. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Not touching, but here's the other thing. You need to also consider that your printing bed may not be huge. You may have a small printing bed. So what you want to do also is see how far this can rotate one direction or the other, because it needs to curve while it's printing. Otherwise, you'll have a very small dragon. So let me explain. Right here, I'm going to turn this thing because, and mind you, I didn't turn it here where it moves so much. I moved it outside this blue circle. Okay, now I'm going to try to move this so that this donut and that donut aren't touching, but at the same time, I don't want this part of the dragon to be touching that part of the dragon. So I'm going to move it some more, and then I want to rotate it a little bit. Okay, let's see if it's touching. Okay, good. Not touching in any way. Okay, now let's see if this is cleared. Let's zoom in here. That does not look like it's touching in any direction. I think that's successful. Now the reason that this is important is because I want you to see something right here. Let me move these things out of the way. You're going to have Tinkercad do all of the work for you. All of the work for you. Now, before we do this, very important point. If you were to have this right here print, right now, these parts right here would mess up your print, these bottom parts. Now they look cool, but you need to cut them. You need to cut them because you want this bottom part to be flat. There's a good chance this thing will not print correctly if it's not flat at the bottom. And you want it to be flat along with the inner part of this half sphere. So how do you do that? Before you go on, you definitely want to get rid of the bottom part. So let me just, this is a size 20. I'm going to put negative 20 and hit enter. And now it's directly beneath everything. Okay, there's that. I'm just stretching it out to cover the bottom of those half circles. Now I'm only going to do this one here. And I want you to see that it's going to cut off those tips right there. Now, before we do anything else, I'm going to duplicate one of these because I don't want to do it again. I'll do it with this one later. Okay, so I'm going to select this, hit shift and that, and then I'm going to hit group, this one right here, or control G. Either one will get you what you need. Okay, very important. While this is happening, I want you to understand there are about 30 pieces, if not more, that make up this part, this one part of your dragon. Now, that is 30 pieces, 60, 90, 120, 150. Same thing over here. Imagine there's 30 pieces here and then another 30. This can have high 500s, maybe even 1,000 pieces. That's the problem with Tinkercad. It cannot handle that many pieces. So there's two ways around this. Okay, so let's see if it did it. Yeah, that worked. There are two ways around this. One is to create your own shape. So how do you do that? Now, let me move. I really don't want to move that one. I really liked where it is. So I'm just going to keep this one. See how it's selected? I'm going to go over here and then your creations. Here it gives me the option to press the button, and what I have selected will now be considered one shape, one item. So I can say that thing, by the way, where did it go? Do I get a picture? I want a picture. Oh, it's taking its time because it's a complicated item. So I'm going to call it Dragon Body 10. 10 just because I know this is the weird one. And then I'm going to write some little description. This is the body of the dragon I just made. And then you want to add some tags. Dragon body. I don't know what else you can. Now, if you don't want it to ever change size when you're messing with it, then click on that. Otherwise, you hit save, and why isn't it showing up yet? Should work. It should be in your saved. Now, because Tinkercad is working with a lot of information here, it could take a while before it shows up. That's what I'm talking about. This is one of the limitations of Tinkercad. Once it gets to a certain amount of shapes in one object, it will freeze on you. It'll take a while. So here's the other thing that I did. Again, I have this selected. I'm going to hit export as an STL. Now this might take a while. What's it doing? Repairing model for export. Okay. Now, usually it's not an issue, right? Usually not an issue. But right now it's dealing with a lot of different parts. It's like, let me think about it for a second. And then it takes a while. Okay, so right here, this should be the one that we created. And again, it's under your creations. No image because there was no image before. Okay, so let's save it to my desktop. And this will be Dragon Body. I'm going to save it there, and I'm going to hit save. There, I have it in the desktop. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import. I'm going to choose a file. I'm going to go to the desktop, Dragon Body. I'm going to open it. And it's going to keep all the original dimensions. And what comes in is what I want to use for the rest of my body. I don't want to do anything else except that one thing. Otherwise, because right now Tinkercad is going to consider it just one item. And it is more likely to actually print or export if it's just one item. Trust me, I did this thing and I just copied it several times and I'm like, okay, I'm done with my dragon. And then I try to export it. For hours and hours, I had Tinkercad open and it would not send it out. Okay, so here we go. The same exact shape, size, dimensions, everything. So here we go. Let's make that transparent. And I'm going to, again, do the same thing I did before, where I'm going to try to curve it like this one. You don't have to do this all the time. I'm just doing it now so you can see the process. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to check my two areas where I want to see. Doesn't touch there. And does this thing touch? Let me bring it down a little bit and then curve. It looks like it's touching. So I'm going to use the arrows to go up, up, up. Is it touching? No. Then move it this way, this way, this way, up, 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 this way. Wow, that's really close. I'm going to move it back a little bit. Okay. And is this thing touching? It is touching. My angle's too great. So, okay. Yep, touching. So I'm going to go back. And let's zoom in here and let's see what we have here. Is it touching? It's hard to tell. I'm going to move this down here. Move it down. Come on, go down. That does not look like it's touching. So there, we have it. I'm going to go on the other side just because I want to make sure this is perfect. Because you imagine doing all this and then finding out, oh, wait, it was touching. My print failed. Sad day. Okay. Wow, that's still touching. So I'm going to move it a little bit to the right, and then I'm going to rotate this 1 degree this way. So still... And that should be even better this time. Yeah, not touching. Whew. Okay, so now this is where you can let Tinkercad do all the work for you. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Very important you follow this next step. I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to drag this right here. Don't touch anything else except this thing, okay? Only touch this brand new one. So I'm only going to move it back a little bit so that it's not touching. And the angle looks like I need to, oh wait, that's way too far. So I'm going to move it back. I cannot have it touching. Okay, very important. Again, I'm only touching this one. I'm not moving anything else but this one. I hope I'm making that point very clear to you. Okay, right here. Okay, now again, I'm going to make it transparent. It's going to help me to tell whether this thing is touching or not. And it looks good so far. All right. So we're good here. A little bit of space here, so I'm going to move again with the arrow, not touching anything else but this one. And it looks like this right here is still not touching. Oh, I'm afraid that part's touching right there. So I'm going to go back a little bit, move it 1 degree that way. Okay. Is it touching? No. Is this touching? It does not look like it's touching. I think we have a winner here. Okay. Now, I have the angle that I want. Now, here's one more thing I need to change. I'm going to hit Shift, and right now it's at 4168. I'm going to move this down to, let's just say 40. Oh, boy. I've tried to go around 2 millimeters down. And again, I got to check to see if it's touching, not touching there. But I'm going to move it forward so that I make sure that this is not touching. I think we're good here. Okay. I'm going to try 1 more degree forward and then, okay, not touching here. And then I'm going to, okay, I'm done. My goal was to not touch anything else and only manipulate this to where I want it exactly. I rotated it and then I shrank it by almost 2 degrees. This should work now, okay? Here is what's going to happen. Again, I haven't touched anything else. Very important. I'm going to hit Control D. Oh, it didn't work. I have to do it again. My bad. Do I get a second one? I do. Sorry. What it should have done. Ooh, let's go backwards with that. And maybe it'll work this next one. What it should have done was copy the rest the way you wanted it. So I'm going to duplicate. Actually, let's change that part. I'm going to duplicate it. And again, the goal is to only touch that one. Only the one that you're working with. I'm going to hit Shift and I'm going to make this smaller. Right now it's 40. I'm going to make it 38. Let's say 38. Okay. And then I'm going to rotate this so it's, not touching and out that way. That looks good right there, right? Let's check it from this angle. Still looks good. And this right here, it's hard to tell, so I'm going to hit T. That looks good. Oh, that is really close right there. So I'm going to go over a little bit. Okay. Now, how did that affect this right here? Still not touching. Okay. Let's see if Tinkercad will work with this. Again, only work this one. We changed the angle to the right and we shrank it by 2 degrees or by 2 millimeters. So I'm going to hit Duplicate. Oh, I didn't do it. Again, why aren't you doing it? Oops, I should have done that. Okay, let's go back. Maybe 3rd time's a charm. And if it doesn't work, well, then I guess you're stuck doing this. I'm going to duplicate this thing. Drag it. Wait. Okay, good. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to drag it over. Again, I'm going to change the angle. just enough. I'm going to move it. And it's kind of hard to tell. So I'm going to zoom in. Is it touching anything? It doesn't really look like it's touching anything. That's pretty good. All right, but I want it to be a little bit more to the right. And is it touching anything here? Again, this is the focus. Is it touching? No. Okay, next step. I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm going to shrink this by 2. Now it should be 36. I should have done this first, I think, because when you do this, it changes what touches here. Already they're touching, so I'm going to move this forward. Now you're probably thinking, this seems like a lot of work. Well, you're going to have to do a lot of work for the dragon, but you only have to do it once. That's the cool thing. Okay, now let's see if Tinkercad will actually do it this time. I'm going to hit Duplicate. It worked. Okay, check this out. Look what's going to happen. It's making the rest of the dragon for you, and it's making it smaller because we removed it by 2. There, that is something that you can do when you are, done with your design. Let me move this thing out of the way. Oops. I'm just going to drag this over here. Okay. Now over here, you can put a decorative tail. Now this one right here, you can add a half sphere if you like. And you can also have little horns coming out of it. Okay, that's the tail. Or you can do whatever other thing you want. You can just leave it like that. Doesn't matter. But here is the thing. Because these are all one objects, Tinkercad will count this as maybe like 30 objects versus the 30 that's just in this one right here. Okay, so here is, let's see, another thing. The bottoms are all touching. You see that, how it's all flat? This one here, if I were to print it, it would mess up the print because it would move up the entire thing and everything else would not print correctly. So you got to make sure that this bottom is flat. All right, so again, when you're designing this stuff, you want to make your own design. Very important you make your own design. Don't just copy mine. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but if you wanted to be something different, put something different. Put up some of these over here on the body, or maybe a star, or what shape is this? A diamond. Make it different. Make it you. And let's see, anything else that you need to know about this? Turning, check to see if it'll move. The bottom has to be clear. You got to make sure that all the parts are just one part. Otherwise, Tinkercad will freeze on you. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of parts I did. And what else? So here's one last thing. Let's give this thing some color here. For this particular design, though, the one with the loops, the donuts, I found out later in my design that I needed to make this as wide as possible at the bottom because it allows for more movement and turning angle so that it will curve. If this were the way it was originally, it would take a longer curve and would not fit on my printing bed, and I'd have to make the dragon super small in order for me to print it. I don't want a small dragon. I want it to be large. I want it to be something I can hold in 2 hands. So for this particular link, these two right here, the wider you have here at the bottom or the less you have there, the better. For this design, you can design it however you like. Let me duplicate this and show you why. Because this one automatically has a built-in, not shape, but allowance for movement. Okay, so this one's a good one to play with. And you don't have to worry about the bottom being gone because this thing right here will allow it to print without having to worry about that. As long as you have these two here, you have to... your only concern is to make sure that it fits when it's doing that without touching over here on this side. See how it does that so easily? Now, mind you, you still have to check this part right here. Still not touching. Oh, barely not touching. Okay, so there you go. If you did this, it would be an even tighter curve. You could have a longer dragon if you made this one. Now, of course, this last one here, you can just print these however you want, because once you design them, you can just plop them in together afterwards. And your only issue is to make sure that your pizza slices don't get in the way of the next one. So there you go. That is how you would decorate your dragon. Please be creative, do something awesome that no one expects, because that's what makes people's items stand out, is to make them different. Yep. Oh yeah, one more thing. You might want to make sure that you get nothing sticking out of here. Any shape, like right now, you see I just added this diamond. You want it to be so that this right here doesn't stick out here. Otherwise, you're going to have failed filament lines here, because when it starts to print, there'll be no supports. So try to stick it to the edge of this thing right here. Whenever you have a shape, let's say you wanted a cone on here and you rotate it. Actually, let's make it small first. Nope, I thought I hit shift. And okay, so you want to rotate it, you want it to stick out. And let's put it right there. You also need to be aware that you're trying to make something that's going to be with no supports, print in place. Right here, all this would work fine with no supports. Let me tell you why. Imagine it's printing at the bottom. See, it'll print here, it'll print there, it'll print. Nothing is hanging. Same thing here. It'll print here, then here. No problem. If you were to do this, though, if you were to turn this, wow, that's so strange how it does that. And you try to print it like this, and you went up. Well, now, when it starts to print this corner right here, or even this corner first, because it starts at the bottom, it would just fall. So those are things you need to be aware of when you are designing something. That's why when I designed my dragon, I made sure that it had a starting point that was going to just start here and work its way up, and then the next one worked its way up and out, so that I didn't have to worry about supports. Okay, I think that's it. Good luck designing your dragon, and next part we'll be designing the dragon head in part 3. Have a good day.